wrote out what my perfect day looked like. And that took years to get to a place where I knew the things, the people, the activities, my passions, my purpose to make it a perfect day. There was no one day where I just massively progressed. It has been a 15-year journey. It's the micro things that you do every single day that build mental resilience. I always feel better when I do it. So I kind of crave that feeling afterwards. Most of the time, it's my mind that is limiting me. It's not like I'm cramping. I don't have a side stitch. I don't have something that is forcing me to stop or slow down. I control my outcomes. My effort is going to dictate the outcome.
Today's guest is Eric Hinman. He's an elite athlete, an Ironman, an entrepreneur, and a wellness advocate who's built his life around training, recovery, and community. Eric has certainly mastered his body through strength, endurance, cold, and heat. But what I'm most interested in actually is how he's mastered his mind. Because behind every plunge and every rep and every hard thing he does is a philosophy for living. So Eric, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I love your background there. It's brain surgery. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It's, I guess, supposed to mean a couple different things at a couple different levels, but yes. All right, so let's get right to one of your core themes. So I've seen the pictures of you in your 20s and then the pictures of you in your 40s now, and we're about the same age. So you talk a lot about how you're healthier now than you were back then, and it seems like you have a happier life as well. So I'm wondering if you can kind of break down this mindset for our listeners. Why do you think you were able to do what you've done while most people out there, struggle and look back on their 20s as the glory days?
Yeah. I mean, I made some radical shifts in my late 20s. I went from kind of living this life that the public tells you to live, marketing, late night activities, work during the weekdays from 9 to 5, party hard on the weekends, to living a more intentional life based around wellness, things that I really enjoy. And it started with hiring a personal trainer in my late 20s when I was pretty out of shape. And the aha moment for me was when I recognized exercise was more than just a physical aesthetic, that it was emotional well-being, it was stress resilience, it was having all day energy, it was just feeling like the best version of myself. And that carried over into wanting to compete in various sports like triathlon, CrossFit, high rocks. And, with that came purpose of, okay, I need to train a specific amount of hours and recover a specific amount of hours and do things with intentionality so that I can either overcome these obstacles like doing an Ironman or doing the Leadville 100, or, just to continue to get better at them, faster times, stronger in the gym, faster CrossFit workouts. And, the reason I've stuck with it ultimately is I feel good day in and day out by exercising, moving, doing the recovery protocols. And I think everyone needs to experience that feeling of I'm the best version of myself because of eating healthier diets, exercising, doing contrast therapy. And, that's when I think it can become habitual. And that's the key is, there was no one day where I just massively progressed. It has been a 15-year journey where I've done similar things now for 15 years. And, if you eat ice cream and drink, every night and don't focus on your diet and only exercise once a week and don't sleep well versus, getting 8 hours of sleep, exercising daily, eating mainly single ingredient food sourced from nature, doing various recovery protocols, minimizing stress, having a good friend group. Those are two very different journeys after a 15-year period. And, ultimately I picked this journey of wellness, and that has gotten me to where I am today at 45. And, I look much better now than I did in my 20s.
we're pretty much the same age, so I can appreciate the difference between the 20s and the 40s. But yeah, what you've done is remarkable. And a lot of us we see the end result now, but we don't see the grind kind of along the way and all of those little choices. I think a question a lot of people would have would be, maybe they're 40 years old now, and they've made choices where they feel a little bit stuck. They may have kids, they may have a mortgage, they have a stressful job. How can they try to incorporate some of these things that you've done without, maybe they're not able to go all in kind of the way you have because of those responsibilities that they have?
For sure. I mean, everyone has glass balls they can't drop. Mortgage, kids, family, employment, and I get that. And I mean, my exercise routine is massively overdoing it for what you need to do to be healthy and to look good. I'm looking to compete at a very high level in my age group in various sports. And, that's going to require much more training volume than would be necessary just, to feel good every single day. I think it's important to carve it out, whether it's 45 minutes, 4 days a week, because you're going to be a better dad. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to run your business better. You're going to be kinder. I really feel like we were designed to move and move often. This is in our DNA, and modern society has taken us away from how we're supposed to live and thrive. So I think if you implement these things into your life, and there's a way to implement them where, it's multitasking without multitasking. Maybe you're taking meetings walking, you're taking meetings in the gym, you're taking sauna meetings, you're including your family in your workout routine. Your family looks forward to that trip you guys go on so you can do a half marathon or a full marathon. There's ways to incorporate it. And it's just time blocking, like time block those things that are super important to you, which is what I do, and then say no to all of the distractions out there. And I really feel like it's more of the distractions that get in people's way. If you really look at your day and all of the things, that you're wasting time on, like carve out 45 minutes and get a workout in. And trust me, you're going to thank me and thank yourself for doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the I don't have time excuse is just that. I think it's, if we really prioritized it, I think we could all find time, especially with all the scrolling time that we have.
Yeah, I mean, we just have so many options in today's society. We have nightlife, we have restaurants we can go to. You can just doom scroll forever. You can watch TV, you can go to the movie. There's just a million things that we have that we can do to occupy our time. And, nothing makes me feel better than hitting a morning workout. That's why I prioritize it. And I really enjoy, my recovery time in the evenings because I combine that with meetings, meeting new people, deep conversations, building relationships. So, again, many of these things I've figured out how to multitask them so they serve multiple purposes. There's a million things I could do for recovery. I could just, sit down and do my Normatec boots and watch TV. But, I pick different things based on, where can I really maximize my time in doing this and get multiple benefits from it while doing it for 45 minutes?
Yeah. And I know you've talked a lot about this, but maybe you could just take our listeners through the perfect day that you've kind of designed for yourself. That sounds like you live on infinite repeat, which is amazing.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I mean, I wrote out what my perfect day looked like, and that took years to get to a place where I knew the things, the people, the activities, my passions, my purpose to make it a perfect day. It's not something you just kind of draw up on a whim. It takes a while to figure out those things. And what I did is I made a couple lists. I made a list of all of the times, conversations, activities, environments where my mind was wandering. I didn't feel like I was getting value or giving value. I wasn't in the present moment. I wasn't in flow state. I just didn't feel like I had purpose in whatever it was. And then I made a list of like flow state conversations I had that day, activities where I was completely in the moment, times when I felt like I was giving massive value or getting massive value, environments where I just thrived and it was, stress-free to do something I enjoyed. And I ultimately just started to build my life around that list of things. And I started to eliminate the things where I wasn't in the moment and, I didn't feel like I was thriving. So, and then I wrote out like, here's all of my tiny wins that I want to hit in a day. Getting a workout in, eating mainly single ingredient foods, getting at least 8 hours of sleep, doing something kind for someone, doing something community oriented, progressing in something, whether it's business or sport, having things to look forward to, whether they're races, adventures, trips I'm going on. And, ultimately I then time blocked my day so that I could fit all of those tiny wins into my day. So, I mean, the way my day looks now is mornings are generally slow, and I'm trying to get to things that I won't get to later in the day. So if I need to spend 30 plus minutes on a task, I like to do that in the morning, because the rest of the day I'm going to be inundated with messages and action items and just executing on things. I usually hit a morning workout around 9 a.m. every day. That's what I would call my first real big win of the day that fuels my energy and mental clarity and the ability to just execute on tasks throughout the day. That's typically my hardest workout that I'll hit in the morning, because I know I'll lose motivation throughout the day to hit a hard workout later in the day. So from 9 until about 10:30, I'm usually in a gym doing some type of either high rocks or CrossFit type training, strength and like higher intensity conditioning. And then after that gym workout, that's when I schedule most of my calls, podcasts. I know my mind will be sharp after that morning workout. So, I'll be present with the people that I'm talking to, and I'll be productive in those meetings. I know I have about 3 hours of that before I start to fade a bit. So then I have another outdoor aerobic activity generally scheduled in the early afternoon hours. So that could be running, could be biking, could be mountain biking, 60 minutes out in nature. And that's kind of that nervous system reset to then be able to go hard again for another couple hours of, either calls or executing on to-dos that I have to get done that day. Around 5 o'clock, most nights, people come over to the house to do contrast therapy. This is generally when I take in-person meetings. So if someone reaches out to me via social media or email, a new company wants to work with me and they're in the area, I invite them over to come and do contrast therapy with me in the evenings that are home. That's usually 5 until about 6:30, and then usually cook at home from 6:30 until 7:30 or 8, and then 8 to 9. I'm usually watching YouTube or listening to a podcast, trying to learn something, and really just like winding down to get a good night's sleep to set me up again for the next day.
That's an amazing day. I think a lot of people are pretty jealous about that day. It's a little different than the way my day typically looks.
Yep,
But
I'm not complaining. And, again, that took years to get to that place,
yeah,
to be able to do that, to be able to monetize that, and, to really be that intentional with, how my day is structured, and knowing that that is, how I operate my best with that structure.
yeah. Amazing. All right. If it's okay, I'd like to go a little bit deeper here. We've talked a lot about doing hard things physically, but I want to talk about doing hard things from a mental perspective.
Yep.
The mindset that you have to do a lot of the things you've done, that doesn't happen overnight. Do you feel like you've kind of trained that mindset deliberately, or does that just kind of evolve along with the physical training that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they go hand in hand. Hitting a hard CrossFit workout, or, I did a high rocks race this weekend in Toronto. Like, these are things where you're pushing yourself physically and mentally, and they really do go hand in hand. But I would say, it's not really the Ironman, it's not Leadville, it's more the micro things every single day that I've done that have built resilience mentally and physically. It's that daily workout, it's that daily run, it's that daily ride, it's that daily getting in cold water. All of those things over time have compounded to, have this fairly high ceiling for physical and mental resilience. So I do think this is on a micro level, just like no one is showing up to an Ironman without having prepared for that Ironman. It was the journey that was really important to get there. And then, that day is just a catered training day. So I think it's the micro things that you do every single day that build mental resilience. And, again, like, all of this is just structured for me. It's kind of on autopilot. And I think that's important, is that I'm not suffering from decision-making fatigue around any of this. They're just built into my day. I know I'm going to hit a workout at 9. I know I'm going to get into cold water. I know that I'm going to go on some kind of ride or run in the afternoon. They're just really built into my day. So I don't have to think about it. And again, that just compounds over time and, builds this tremendous mental resilience. And, where that then comes into play is, if something bad happens, someone in my family is sick, or, a business goes awry, all of these things, you're conditioning your mind to not dwell on that discomfort of hardship. I really feel like now when hardship comes, like I've really conditioned my mind to be resilient to it.
And you think that conditioning just sort of evolved on its own over time? I mean, do you do, like, in addition to the the physical recovery stuff, do you do purposeful mental recovery stuff as well? Or is it just kind of evolve along with the physical training?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the meditation side of it would be, the rides, the runs that I go on. I typically do them solo. And, that is a refresh for my nervous system, for my emotional well being, for stress resilience. But yes, ultimately, I do think that it is over time, and the physical side is directly correlated to the mental resilience side.
Yeah. What are you thinking about during a 3-hour ride when you're out there alone? Are you just in flow, or are you kind of just stream of consciousness?
Yeah, I try to be in flow.
Yeah.
When my mind is wandering and I'm thinking about a lot, that generally is when the long sessions are the worst. So, yeah, if you can really just drop in, oftentimes I'll put one song on repeat, something like house music, Rufus Du Sol, Odessa, and just have that continually playing. So my mind is kind of in a trance. And, oftentimes I wouldn't say I'm intentionally thinking about anything, but often that's when I get my best ideas. I feel like in nature, doing something aerobic, it allows your mind to marinate on all of the experiences that you've collected over time, the conversations you've had. And that is often when I get ideas for a social media post, an event that I want to spin up, creative marketing idea for a brand I work with. So I don't intentionally have any kind of note or thing that I go into the ride that I'm thinking about. I just allow my mind to go where it wants. And yeah, I mean, that is my creative fuel oftentimes, are those outdoor workouts.
Yeah, you mentioned nature. I'm curious if you feel like being out there in nature makes a big difference versus, sitting on a stationary bike and riding for 3 hours.
I do. I used to do that. I mean, I used to ride upwards of 5 hours indoors on a trainer when I was training for
Oof.
Ironman. And, now I pretty much exclusively do my riding and running outdoors. I have found that for me, there are additional benefits of being outside in nature, soaking up the sun, looking at, just beauty. So yes, I tend to do almost all of them outside. And again, I really feel like this goes back to our ancestors. They were outside in the sun being active, and it makes sense why we would feel so good in doing that. We're
Yeah.
replicating what we were designed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the one thing I regret about my job is that you can't operate outside. That would be great. Tell me a little bit about the days when you don't feel like doing it. When you're like, I don't want to go in 40-degree water. I don't want to go, ride for 5 hours. What's going on in your mind during those days?
Again, this is where structure comes into play. I'm sure there's days where you might not want to go into work, but it's part of your structure. You do it. So I would say that is the biggest key, is just having structure and having habits that you do day in and day out. I always know I'm going to feel better. So, I've done this for long enough and enough times to know that I always feel better when I do it. So I kind of crave that feeling afterwards, even though I might not be excited in the moment to do that, or even, while doing it, as excited as I usually am. I still do it because I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. And, my mind is just conditioned to that.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever look at this, even though this day is amazing, do you ever look at this day as kind of, boring, or you feel trapped in it and, you can't kind of do maybe something completely different because you've built such a structured life?
Sure. So there's variety within the routine. There's different workouts, there's different places I'm biking, there's different people in the mix with the contrast therapy. So, within the structure, there is variety. The people I'm talking to every single day with meetings, different people, different creative solutions to problems. So I really don't, because I feel my worst when I'm just like going through the motions, allowing for like, you know, distractions and notifications on the phone. And that's when I feel my worst. I just don't feel like I get anything done, and I don't progress. I would say that's one of the things that really fuels me is I like progressing in things. I like getting better, whether it's building a business or, getting faster on the bike or getting stronger in the gym. I love progression. And to get progression, you need repetition. You have sets and reps and everything in life. So I know that, and I know that's what fuels me. So that's why I live a structured life, and I say no to most things, and I say yes to the things that really matter to me.
Yeah, it seems like you've really done a good job of guarding your time and guarding your attention. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of us to do. I think a lot of us say yes too easily, and a lot of us are distracted a lot of the time, especially in this world. I mean, do you have any advice for people about how to start down the path you're on and get off the path a lot of us are on?
Yeah, I mean, simplify, again, just figure out what are the distractions. I actually have a friend right now who just moved to Bali, and he's simplified his life down to a backpack. I feel like there is so much to be learned from that, because it's so easy to collect things, to do everything, to allow for distractions, allow for, just too much to happen instead of singular focus and recognizing that we're all going to live many chapters in life. And I really feel like the best way to live is to focus on one thing at a time. And when that no longer serves you, move on to the next and focus on that thing. So, yeah, just trying to maybe that's excessive, obviously, getting down to just living out of a backpack. But, how can you simplify your life and get rid of a lot of the distractions that are just clutter around you? And time blocking, again, like figure out what are the things that really matter. Family time, I'm sure, matters tremendously to many of the people that will listen to this. So how can you really prioritize family time? Maybe that means you need to figure out how to create passive income streams so that you have more time to be able to spend with your family and more time to spend on hobbies. So yeah, figuring out what your ultimate goals are, and then, just backtracking it down to a micro level of like, here's how I want to design my day so that this is the outcome after 5, 10, 15 years.
That's great advice. And I think a lot of us could benefit from that. I wanted to change gears slightly. So I wanted to hear a little bit about the pain cave. For those who don't know what that is, that's kind of where endurance athletes kind of go when they're really kind of suffering, maybe hour 8 of an Ironman, or the 9-mile Columbine climb at Leadville. So can you take us through like what's going on in your head when you're maybe climbing those 9 miles at Leadville, and kind of suffering, certainly physically, and I imagine mentally too?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is tricking your mind into pleasure. So for me, I'm not thinking about how much that hurts in the moment. I'm thinking about how good it's going to be when I get to the top of the climb and I get to descend that thing that I just climbed. Or, in a high rocks race, how good laying down on that carpet on the stage when I cross the finish line is going to feel, how awesome that meal is going to taste post race. How many chocolate milks I get to consume after doing that Ironman, 16 miles into the marathon in an Ironman. I'm just thinking about the next mile, that next aid station, seeing a family member who's going to cheer me on. So I'm just constantly tricking my mind into pleasure, thinking about that next micro transaction that is going to feel damn good. And then the other component I would say is I've done this enough to know where I can sit and for how long I can sit. Like going up Columbine at Leadville, I'm not going at an effort that I can't sustain. I'm sitting right at that line of like, this sucks, but I can sustain this for 45 minutes. Same with a high rocks race. I'm going at an effort. My heart rate is 158. My max heart rate's 163. I know I can maintain 158 for 60 minutes. So it's just like sitting in it, knowing that I've done it before, knowing that I can do it again. Same with cold exposure. Every time I get in cold water, I get that initial shock of like, oh, this sucks. But I've done it so many times that it's not going to get any worse, I just sit in it. So I think it's experiencing that discomfort enough to know that it's just that, it's a feeling and it's not going to get worse. And I can sit in this for a long period of time. And then again, like tricking your mind into the pleasures that are to come, in the near future.
Okay. And so you're kind of tuning out all the screaming that's going on at you at that moment and
Exactly.
basically just focusing on the future gratification.
Exactly. Because most of the time, it's my mind that is limiting me. It's not like I'm cramping. I don't have a side stitch. I don't have something that is forcing me to stop or slow down. It's just that high heart rate feeling of like, this hurts, am I going to be able to sustain this? And, I think it takes sustaining it for long periods of time to recognize that you can do way more than what your mind is telling you can't.
Yeah. People talk about that governor effect in the mind that kind of is trying to limit you and protect you, and how you have to break through that. I'm sure you've noticed that.
Exactly. 100%. Yep. Yeah. My body isn't
Yeah.
failing me. So why can't I just keep going?
Does that inner monologue, does that differ on days when you're feeling good versus when you're just not kind of feeling it?
100%. I mean, a bad race, a slow time is way worse than a good race and a fast time. Generally, a good race and a fast time means I was just in flow state. I was in pain, but not mental pain. I didn't have the devil on one shoulder that I had to keep brushing off. And a bad race is that, you have this voice on your shoulder that's telling you walk, it'll feel so good. It's not your day. You're not going to have a good time today. Just who cares? Slow down, drop out. And on those days, that's when it's really tough to just keep brushing off that voice. And, you got to keep going. And, I think we all train for having a good day. We want a good day, but you just don't know when that bad day can come. And I always write reports after any of my races to recognize maybe some of the things that led to a good race or some of the things that led to a bad race. So I think it's important to always reflect and understand what were some of the circumstances that led to flow state for 8 hours at Leadville, and what were some of the circumstances that led to a 11-hour time at Leadville when the day sucked, and trying to cure that for the next time you're doing a long outing.
Yeah. So like the day you've built, basically just iterate and get it better and better and kind of dial it in more and more, it sounds like.
Exactly. What was the nutrition leading up to it? What was the recovery leading up to it? What was the training leading up to it? Day of, who was there with me? What was my mental states? How did I start the race? How did that result in the finish of my race? So just writing all of those things out.
All right, I wanted to ask a little bit about some challenges that we all face as humans, because I'd like to hear how you think about them. So, first of all, let's talk about setbacks. Maybe a failed business venture, or probably more relevant in your case, if you had a bad injury. How that would obviously totally disrupt your routine, your physical well-being, your mental well-being. How would you deal with that? I'm sure you've dealt with it before.
For sure. Yeah. What can I still do instead of what can I no longer do? That's how I look at any of those. So I tore my MCL in 2016 and I couldn't run, I couldn't bike, I couldn't squat, I couldn't box jump, I couldn't do many of the things that I enjoy doing, but I could ski on a ski erg. So I bought a ski erg and I built up to a 2-hour ski on a ski erg. So I always look at these things as, okay, what is the opportunity from this? What can I still do because I can no longer do these other things? So that's the way I look at it. And I also look at them as speed bumps. Most of the time when something bad happens, it's just a speed bump in life. And I've had many speed bumps in life where in the moment it felt catastrophic. It felt like the world was ending, but it was a speed bump in looking back at it. So I think you have to recognize that the mind is resilient and it will, you'll get back to a pleasurable place. You just need to give it time. And that's obviously much easier said than done in the moment, but I think it's going through enough speed bumps in life to have conditioned your mind to say, this is a speed bump, here's what I still can do. I'm going to focus on this and know that eventually I'll be over the speed bump and I'll be back to normal life.
Yeah, I've noticed that trait in a lot of high performance people. It's kind of like the obstacle is the way, Stoic principle, where you just kind of make the best of it and follow that to new paths that you didn't know existed.
Yep. Yeah. Again, a
Yeah.
lot of this is just kind of tricking your mind into pleasure. So, what are the things I still can do that will yield pleasure and happiness?
And are you able to get there pretty quickly, or do you still go through kind of a grieving process and a denial process and all the things that we typically go through with a setback?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a human, I'm not a robot, so I still deal with the emotional, distraught of shit, this sucks. I hate where I'm at right now, but I get back to the things I love quickly. If I'm sick, I'm out for a day or two, but I get back to working out. I get back to sitting in a sauna. I get back to going into cold water. I get back to hanging out with good friends and building community, and I get back to my calls and building things with others. So I get back to what I know fuels me, progress.
So speaking of progress, and we're about the same age, so I'm allowed to say this. So how do you think about getting older? As we get into our 50s, 60s, about the time when your body is probably not going to be making progress and going the other way. How are you going to handle that? Still find meaning without this progressive, progress and performance?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it will be tough. I am hopefully training now in a way that I'll be able to maintain this for a long period of time. But I competed in Ironman from 2010 until 2014, and I was in a small city in upstate New York, Syracuse, New York, and that became my identity. I was this elite amateur Ironman triathlete, and when I no longer found purpose and my body was just broken down, and I dreaded every training session, and I was skipping races, that for me was the first time I really dealt with, okay, I this no longer is serving me, and I need to switch gears and find something else where I have passion each day. I need to strip this identity of Ironman triathlete from my ego and figure out something else that, really just fuels me and gets me excited about every single day. So I figured out an exercise routine that served me well. I, backed off a lot on the endurance training. I stopped racing triathlons, and I realized that I was inspiring a lot of people just to move and to live a healthier life, and how that affects all other aspects of their life. And then ultimately building a following on social media and then building a business around it. So, I think there's always blessings that come from not being what you once were, or what you were once doing, and figuring out what is this new thing where I get my passion from and my progress from. So, later in life, that may be more mentoring and giving back and helping others, coaching, building community, using my mind to do things where maybe I can't use my body as much, but I can still use my mind. So I think it's just figuring out, what are these new things that I can start to do that just get me excited every single day to, wake up and just start like doing something. Because I think when we stop doing things, that's when we start to decay and die.
Yeah, I mean that's a great answer, and it's kind of the same winning mentality of the obstacle is the way. We get older, we find another way, and new opportunities open up.
Yep. And there's always a way to compete now as well. And when I say compete, I say more against myself, while I'm not winning races or on the podium for anything. Like in my age group, I'm doing really well. I just won my age group at the High Rocks in Toronto. So I think there's
Nice.
always a way for us to compare ourselves with our prior selves. And that's a lot of what I'm doing now is, I'm just trying to be the best version of myself, understanding that maybe physically I've reached my peak, but I can still progress. I can still progress in skill based activities. Like I'm still getting better at mountain biking. My times are getting faster every year at Leadville. Some of that is fitness, but eventually the fitness is going to go down. But if my skill is better, then I might still get better at it. So I really do enjoy skill based activities where you can continue to progress just based on the, getting better at the skill of it.
Yeah. All right.
Like
That's great. Yeah.
podcasting.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. You never know, right? I didn't envision myself doing this even a few years ago. And we're not over the hill yet. I think there's still hope for us for at least a
I can't
while.
agree more. Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting faster in many respects. With endurance, I still am getting faster at 45. I'm faster now than I was in my mid 30s.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think we just have to keep challenging ourselves. And you've certainly, inspired me to do that. I actually just signed up to do Leadville next summer myself. So
Heck
that's
yeah.
going to be a stretch. I'm not going to be under 9 hours, but if I could get it to 11 something, that would be great.
You're going to love it. It's such a great day out there. It's obviously hard, but you're out there with so many other people that are, doing something hard. There's just an energy when you're at an Ironman, a marathon, any kind of endurance event where everyone else out there put in a significant amount of work to get to that starting line.
Yeah, it's going to be a long 10, 11 months, but I'm hoping to enjoy the process and enjoy that day. We'll see.
Yeah, train at elevation. That's my biggest recommendation for Leadville. If you can get out there for some training sessions prior to the race, ideally, if you can get out there 4 weeks before the race and, maybe not sleep in Leadville. I sleep terribly at that elevation, but train in Leadville on a regular basis. That has certainly helped me a lot with that race.
Okay. All right. I'll have to ping you and bother you offline about this.
Sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about community because that's a huge part of your life. And I think it's something that for a lot of us is really missing. There's an epidemic of loneliness out there, even though we're all so connected all the time. You're like you said, having people over to the house every day, doing sauna sessions, workouts together, sharing, suffering sometimes together. What advice do you have for people out there who are probably pretty lonely in starting to take the first steps to kind of build, what you've built from a community standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, figure out who your people are. So, what do you enjoy doing and where are those other people who enjoy doing what you're doing? And, who are the people you want to emulate? What is the ceiling? I mean, I moved to Colorado for a reason because that's where many of the best endurance athletes are. That raised my ceiling. All of my friends do Leadville. It's normalized. Where when I lived in Syracuse, the one guy that I knew who did Leadville was an anomaly and, was just like bowing to him. And now it's normal. Everyone does Leadville. And being here in Austin, this is a mecca for content creators, podcasters, entrepreneurs, creatives. So this is going to raise my ceiling just by being in that environment with others. So easier said than done, but I do believe that environment heavily dictates your reality. And environment is often going to be like who you're surrounded by. And who you're surrounded by is going to dictate, what your ceiling is and what your floor is and what your daily decisions are each day. Finding my people, like I had great friends in Syracuse, but I felt like I had outgrown many of my friends in Syracuse. And I just needed people who were living their life more similar to how I had started living my life, based around wellness, being outside often, long bike rides, long runs. And I found that in spades in Austin. I found my community there. So it was easy to live my life the way I wanted to because my entire friend group was living, the life that I wanted. And, same goes for here in Austin where, many of my friends are entrepreneurs here. They're in the wellness space. They're content creators. So, I'm able to bond with like-minded people and learn and grow from them. And I think it requires carving out, specific blocks of time to, hang out with the guys. I have so many successful people that come over to our homes. And after that hour and a half sauna session, after they meet 5 new friends sitting in the sauna, they're like, damn, I didn't know how much I needed that. Just like hanging with the guys, because they have a busy career, they have a family, and they just don't get out to like have vulnerable conversations with the guys very often. So I do think it's important to carve out that time for community. And there's a million ways to do that. You can join a community-based gym, like a CrossFit gym. You can join a run club, join a tennis club, a pickleball club, whatever the things are that you enjoy. Like, where can you go to get those communities? And then I do think it's cool to build your own. Start inviting 4 people over for dinner once a month. Start a run club. Start, doing contrast therapy with your friends. Invite them to come over once a month. This doesn't have to be as often as I do it, but just carving out some time to meet new people and just to have conversations with like-minded people. I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, that's so amazing and so powerful. And I think, in this day and age, a lot of people would just rather sit at home on YouTube than do that. And it really takes initiative. And I really admire that you've been able to build this to the point where you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think social media is great to be able to meet new people, reach out to new people, but ultimately, like, in person is where it's at. That's where you're going to really feel the connection to someone, is getting together in person with people.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's something about the kind of the shared suffering of endurance sports or cold plunging or even sauna sessions that are long that really brings people together at an even deeper level?
1,000%. Yeah. I mean, you bond fast with someone when you're sitting in a hot sauna with them, when you do an Ironman with them, when you do a long ride with them. There's just this instant respect that, each person gains from the other. So, yeah, I mean, I recognize that during Ironman of like, man, I am just forming fast friendships. I just, bike 2.5 hours with this person and I feel like we're like best friends. So, and same with the sauna sessions. Like, man, I've just built so many amazing relationships from a 30-minute sauna session with someone. So yeah, the shared suffering, the endorphin release of exercise with others, like, they all just compound for fast friendships and deep friendships.
Yeah. How do you keep up with all these people? I mean, there must be thousands of people that you've kind of spoken to and befriended, and is that must be hard at some level to kind of maintain all of that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out because my network continues to grow and I continue to get more and more text messages and DMs each day. So I'm figuring that out. I'm pretty good at, my direct circle, like staying in touch with them and doing things with them. I'm not nearly as good at staying in touch with, people that I met 3 years ago that are not in the same vicinity as me. The one thing I do is, if I have a really powerful conversation with someone, I have in my notes just kind of like a VIP list. Like, these are the people that I really bonded with. And I'll look at that on a regular basis and be like, shit, I need to reach out to Larry. I haven't talked to him in a while. And, I really enjoy hanging out and conversing with Larry. I got to reach out to Larry. So, like having some kind of list. And I'm sure with AI, there's way better ways to do this now. But that's what I've used in the past, is just kind of a running list of like awesome conversation, really want to stay in touch with this person. And then some people that I have really powerful conversations with, I'll just have like a reoccurring calendar appointment every 4 months. It's just in my calendar, 4:30 p.m., catch up time with Emily. Because we had a great conversation. I want to catch up with this person every 4 months. So I think that's another way to do it, is just like reoccurring calendar appointments with people that you want to speak with regularly, but you won't see regularly.
Yeah, well, that's great advice because yeah, I suffer from the same thing, out of sight, out of mind, and it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
So I wanted to ask you about, your everything you've built so far. You're kind of, you have this huge community, social media following, the athletic achievements, et cetera. How is your mind dealing with this? Do you feel like you're kind of basking in this, like, I did it, I made it, or are you kind of still hearing the whispers of like, what's the next thing? How do I get even, more followers or faster time? Or is there this craving, or is this satisfaction and basking, or both?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that I am a goal oriented person with respect to audience and business. I really do things on a micro level that I know will build to something over time. I mean, I obviously have goals with some of my athletic endeavors of like times I would like to hit, but ultimately it's more on a micro level where I just want to get these things done every single day, and I know that will build towards something in the future. And then I would also say I'm not great at being content. I wish I was better at being content, but I do similar things each day that I know yield happiness. So I guess in that respect, I am content in my days, but I'm not content in just like sitting around. Like I do need continual progress to feel alive and to feel, like I'm getting value and giving value to the world. I need to be building in some respect. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I think we probably could all work on if we're high achievers, type A personalities, as being a bit more content. I obviously do express gratitude and I'm thankful that I am where I am, but I love incrementally pushing the ball forward every single day.
That's interesting because I agree. I mean, we're, in the high achieving world, there's always achievement. That's kind of how we've built our worlds, our egos, our self-esteems to a certain extent. I want to hear a little bit more about that if you're able to. Like, do you feel at peace kind of even if you're just sitting alone with your thoughts, or is there always kind of like how do I, get faster, stronger, achieve more, meet more people, grow, how tell me a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, no, I am hard charging. So I am not very good at sitting around. I had a couple friends a few weeks ago who went on a retreat in Utah and they were just alone it was a vision quest. They were alone for 3 days, fasting in nature, no phone, no ability to do anything other than just kind of sit there in their thoughts. And I would say that scares me more than anything because I do love pushing the ball forward, and I feel like that's something I should do. I mean, that's my next Ironman is doing a 3 day vision quest, fasted in nature, and not having anything to do, and being okay with that. So that's an area where I could definitely improve. And I have many friends who've done 7 day darkness retreats, and I'm like, how in the world did you do that? So yeah, I mean, I think some of those would be my next Ironman, to build mental resilience around like not having to do and just be. I think that's very, very hard.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of know you're on the right track when you have something that scares you that much, and you're like, well, that's probably something I should explore to grow.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, many of these crazy endurance challenges that many would never do, those have become somewhat comfortable for me. So, what is the thing that I have discomfort around where I can grow?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have friends who have done 7, 10 day totally silent retreats, and it seems I can't even imagine in the world we're in, but it must be such an amazing mental reset.
For sure. And it's going to help with other things. It's going to help on that 10-hour flight where you're bored out of your minds. So I do feel like there's a lot of uh, growth in just being okay with just existing and just being.
Yeah, no, I think that's something for all of us to work on. Oh, thank you. I wanted to ask if you have some kind of, spiritual side to your life in some way, whether that's religious or philosophical, Stoicism, Buddhism, traditional religions. Is there anything that you kind of bring into your daily practice and existence?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I believe in God and I grew up Christian, going to church. It's not a huge part of my practice anymore. I would say that, most of my deep thought and existence, stems from moving meditation, just being out in nature and being grateful that I'm here on this amazing planet we live on, and that there's all of these other amazing people around me. But I don't have any kind of, spiritual practice in the sense of going to church or any kind of spiritual community that I'm part of. But yeah, something I'm definitely looking to get more into as I continue to grow and age.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. All right, last question for you. If you lost everything external, your health, your businesses, your social media following, what kind of core part of you would still be unshakable and present through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, be kind to others, move the ball forward in some way, whatever I still am able to move the ball forward in doing, being grateful for what I still have, figuring out something that I'm passionate about that I can progress in. So, yeah, just going back to kind of those core fundamentals of what the human experience is.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, really one of the themes I've gotten from you is this just amazing half glass full mentality, that a lot of
Yeah.
people don't have. You just, you find opportunities even in setbacks. And I really admire that.
Yeah, I control my outcomes. My effort is going to dictate the outcomes. So yeah, just it's on me. I need to figure it out instead of, damn, all of this has happened to me. It's what can I still do?
Awesome. Eric, you've been inspiring and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, my pleasure.